Many years ago, I was a Rebbe in a yeshiva called Binat Chaim. It was the first Rebbe position I got. I was around 24 at the time. I was in Kollel in Eretz Yisrael for 2 years. I was in Kollel in America for a year afterwards. And then I had to go work. I needed the parnasa, and I wanted, I needed to bring some parnasa to the house. And I got a job as a Rebbe in a yeshiva called Binat Chaim, which is not too far from here, actually. 33 years ago, right by Grand Central. And it was a yeshiva for Bukharian kids. And it was the first of its kind, actually. The first high school of its kind, at least. It was yeshiva primary before. But the first yeshiva high school of its kind, just for Bukharian children. And it was funded by mostly Ashkenazim, the great Reb Zev Wolfson Zatzal, Yitzi Laubs of the world. Many, many people were involved in this very holy avoda that we undertook. And look what expanded from it 30 years later. How many yeshivas, how many from Bukharian children are out there, how many B'nai Torah, Rabbeim. But it all started, I would say, high school-wise from Binat Chaim. So I was given an 8th grade class, and like an 8th grade class, these kids had no Torah education, and they were pretty wild. They were pretty, I won't say, God forbid, they were, Rahman al that they were anti-Yiddishkeit, but they really didn't have much of a clue of what really Yiddishkeit was. So I was young at the time, I was vibrant, not that I'm not vibrant now, but I was more vibrant, and I had a very big passion for what I did. I really gave my koiches, my energy, and I gave my life. Baruch Hashem, I was zeicha to be able to give of myself to such a darga. So Hanukkah was approaching, and I was telling my students about the importance of a Hanukkah menorah. Before that, I actually discussed with them the story of Hannah with her 7 children, how they didn't want to eat not kosher, they didn't want to eat treif, they didn't want to one of them bowed down to the emperor. But the whole story there, and it's a very, very, if you look in the Medrash about it, it's a very, very, I wouldn't say grotesque story, but it's a difficult story, how the kids were mutilated. It was just a terrible story, and each one had to see the other one suffering, being cut up. It was a very bad story, and I was careful how I said it to them. But I wanted to show them what it means not to be careful not to eat not kosher. And I got very emotional when I used to see over the stories. And it hit home. I saw the kids were very quiet, and they were very in tune to what I was saying. So I threw in about the Hanukkah, and I threw in about the Hanukkah menorah. And I was telling them the importance of what it is to light a menorah, a beautiful menorah, to spend some extra money on oil, to spend, Shemen Zayazach. It's better not to use candles if you don't have to. I mean, go to the Mahadrin, Shibim Mahadrin, and we went through different inyanim. But I was telling them how beautiful it is if each one of them could somehow find a way to get themselves a menorah, and if not, maybe I will be able to get them at least a candle menorah, because it was coming out of my pocket. It wasn't made that. I'd buy them at least a candle menorah, that none of them should not have a menorah at home. And they just came pretty much, these parents were pretty much new in the United States at the time. They were coming in 5-10 years earlier, but this class pretty much, they knew English, but they weren't as advanced as the Bukharians are today in American culture and in actually, being in a yeshiva. So I was telling them about it, and during that time, Marlboro they used to give out Marlboro, the cigarettes. Marlboro used to give out catalogs at that time. And in these catalogs, you can get prizes if you collect a certain amount of miles. Now, what were these miles? They were on the side of the carton of each cigarette, of each pack of cigarette. On the side of the box, there was something that said 5 miles. And you rip it off, and you collect them. The prizes that they were given in their first catalog were incredible prizes. They changed it in the second catalog because they were giving away too many prizes. But the prizes were intense and were actually phenomenal prizes considering how much miles you had to collect. For example, you needed to collect, 2,000 miles to get a sleeping bag, a very beautiful Marlboro sleeping bag that was really meant for the winter. It was just, they had tremendous stuff. They had Swiss Army watches and knives and 50 different things you can order from them. Coolers and pool tables. So you collect X amount of miles. The problem was that they didn't realize how many people decided to collect these miles. So actually, I saw the catalog a few months earlier, and I thought it was a cool catalog. So I told kids, listen guys, if any of your parents smoke, if you could just whatever, I wasn't saying smoking is a good thing, but if you smoke and you see a pack of cigarettes, bring me the miles. I want to order stuff, maybe for the class, maybe for my prizes. So that's what I did. I had them bring. Meanwhile, there was around 400 kids in the school at the time, 350 kids. Every day since then, Kids were bringing me 50, 70. People were just collecting in the streets. People went to relatives. Again, smoking is not a good thing, okay? So that's not the point. In that time, it wasn't so terrible in the sense for them to collect the 5 miles and bring it in. So I would be getting hundreds of miles per day. Hundreds of miles today. Every rabbi needs the miles. There was a boy in my class, his name was Mordechai Isaacov. This boy, Mordechai Isaacov, was a very special boy. And today he's a tremendous askin for the Bukharian community. He was a tremendous learner for many, many years. He still learns a lot. But he holds up a lot of yeshivas. He's a pretty well-to-do person, but a very special boy. And he used to learn Yom Balayla. But when I first got him, he was just becoming from. So he's sitting in the class, and he would collect also miles, personal. And he would sit every day, and I let him do it. He would sit in class quietly. At the time, he wasn't into learning so much, but he wasn't making noise, but he was a good boy. And he would sit there, and certain times of the day, he would take out his miles, and he would count them. He would count them out. I would see him going 5, 10, 15. And then he'd put them in rubber bands and put them on the side. And by recess especially, he would be doing this. And he put them in bags and then another bag. Basically, these miles were his life. Now, I want to tell you the poverty that these children had when they first came was really intense. And it was really terrible to see because they had to give up big professional jobs, some of them. Some of them were doctors and lawyers and engineers in their country. And when they came to America, they couldn't use it. They had to either restart school again, and many of them couldn't do it. So that's why a lot of them took positions, whatever they could take, to support their family. But the poverty was rampant. I remember the families would live together to be able to just survive, to make ends meet. So it was a very difficult situation at the time, I remember, for most of the Bukharian people, especially in my class. So this guy, I realized his miles were big to him. And for 3-4 months, he was collecting these miles. I'm telling you, by recess, he would sit there almost like a miser, counting his money, counting his miles, putting them in, and I would see him lovingly put them in the bag. 8th grader, he must have been 14 years old at the time. And he's putting it in the bags, and that's how every day he would sit by recess doing this. And then he'd get one more and one more. Meanwhile, I was collecting 25,000 miles, 30,000 miles, and he had all collected around 1,000. So that was the difference of how much I collected, I was given compared to him. Anyway, we were discussing menorah. And after class, he comes over to me and goes, Rabbi, he tells me, I want an oil menorah. Is it possible, because you were discussing how value and the olive oil and the oil menorah, I want an oil menorah. So I said, I'm not the wealthiest guy right now. I have a yeshiva salary, which at the time was very little also. I'm willing to buy for everybody a candle menorah with candles. I really can't afford to buy you an oil menorah. So he goes, how much is an oil menorah? So I said, at the time it was like $8, $12. The ones I was discussing, which was 35 years ago, was almost double today. So it was like $10, $15, $20, whatever it was, for the nicer ones. So I said, you know what? I looked at him, I said, you know what? I'm going to buy you an oil menorah. I'm going to buy you one for $5. They have these little ones at the time on a stick. I'm going to buy it for you. He goes, no, Rabbi, I really want the 12, 13, whatever it was, that menorah that you were discussing. So I said, where are you going to come up with that money, the extra money? So he thinks for a second, and he says, you know what? I know what I'm going to do. And he goes to his briefcase, and he takes out the bag of miles that he collected for 3 to 4 months, since September that he was collecting, beginning of September. And he walks over to me, and he says, Rabbi, if you buy me the menorah, I'll give you this. And I want to tell you, my heart really fell. And I looked at him, and my mama got very emotional. And then I said to myself, Avram, take it from him. And I took it from him, and I said, I'm bringing you the menorah in 2 days. Anyway, I brought him the menorah in 2 days later. But the whole time on the way home, I was crying. And I came to my wife, and I said to her the story, and she got emotional. And I told her over to a few of my rebbeim. Now, why did I take the miles? Not because I was planning on giving it back to him. But it hurt me so much to take it from him. But I knew how, when he lights this menorah, how much went into this Mesirat Nefesh for this menorah. The chusim for 2-3 days, as much as it pained me, as much as I cried many times in the car, and I didn't let him see me when I came into class, that I was red-eyed from the story. It hit me so. Even today, it still hits me 33, 34 years later. I remember that he he took it and he actually brought that first day. He held the menorah, he put it on his table in class, and how he got so personal for this menorah. On the first day after Hanukkah, I went over to him that day. I said, "How was the menorah?" He goes, "It was so fantastic." He lit it by the window. His whole family was so excited about it, and my heart was breaking. The second day, I gave him back his miles, and I said, "The only reason why I took the miles was chas v'shalom. I wasn't planning on ever taking them, but I wanted you to get the complete schar for what it means that you gave up something so precious for yourself, for a menorah. For you to give up those miles, and I used to watch you for 3-4 months counting them like gold pieces. And I didn't want to say you don't have money, but he knew what I said. It wasn't easy for you. You weren't able to pay for it. But you gave it with the most important, valuable thing you personally own physically, to light the menorah. That is what the menorah is all about. That little bit of darkness, that little bit of light that takes off a lot of darkness, that expels a lot of darkness. This was that little light that took away a lot of darkness.